Yo, what's up guys? It's Robin here, and this video is going to be my early mid-game guide for set 5. It's going to be very similar to the video I made for set 4, but this one's for set 5. Before we begin, I want to let you guys know about this app I've been using called MOBALYTICS. I highly recommend if you're a newer or if you're a newer player or if you're new to set 5, I highly recommend downloading this app. This app has like everything you need to learn about set 5. It has a team builder, which I'll be using later in the video. You know, you can build your own comps. You know, it tells you the synergies. You know, it's very good app for theory crafting. It also shows your own profile here, so it has your match history, different analytics and stats. You know, average plays for what trait, match history, stuff like that. You can also search for whoever you want. Like let's search for KRUMX. If you search for KRUMX, here's his stats for everything. It has a list of all the set 5 champions here. It has a set of all the items here, all the inner synergies. It even has its own tier list of champions and team comps that it provides with you. So it's actually very useful. Another thing they have is like they have this overlay you can put in your games. Well, it has a item cheat sheet overlay where you can click it and just see all the items. You can import team comps into the overlay in your game, so you can kind of know which units to hold. I used this app when I was first starting out, when I didn't really know like what items to build, what units to carry, and I didn't memorize it all yet. So I would have like one of these overlays in game, and it really helped me a lot. So I actually recommend using this app to help you, you know, kind of learn the game faster. And without further ado, let's get right into the early mid game guide. Basically for this set and like every other set, your early game, you just want to think of frontline, backline. So what frontline is? Frontline basically your tanks that tanks all the damage, and then your backline are the damage dealers. So you want to have a good mix of frontline, backline. So frontline, early frontliners will be like vanguards, brawlers. Early backliners will be, you know, legionnaire, spellweaver, you know, Lissandra, renewers, rangers. But just make sure you have a frontline, backline, and you should be set. So I'm gonna be going over like every single one cost champion, and then give you guys like the units that you want to look to pick up and the synergies that go all with that champion. Basically, there's no chosen for this set, so the early game you're gonna play around is not whatever chosen you get, but it's about what 2-star you get. So and also depends kind of with your items. So let's start with AATROX. So let's say you get a 2-star AATROX. The person you usually pair with AATROX is going to be KALISTA. So if you're going to, if you have a bunch of AATROXs, you do want to look for the KALISTA. You get a legionnaire, and KALISTA is a great item holder for either AP or AD carry. She can hold items. She can hold any items. She can hold 80 items like BT, you know, Deathblade, Gwynsu's, whatever. So she can be your item carrier for Aphelios, for Draven. She can also hold AP items with how her kit works. So if you're trying to play Vel'Koz and you want to build Shojin, you can give her a Shojin. So if you want to give her Shojin, you can give her Shojin, and then, you know, Jeweled Gauntlet, something like this, and then KALISTA can also be your item holder for Vel'Koz or Karma or whatever. So KALISTA is one of the champions you want to pair with AATROX. Usually what I pair with this, so AATROX is not really a frontliner unless you stack like infinite tanks items on him, but you do want to stack a frontline with this build. So it's going to be either vanguards or brawlers. I recommend vanguards. It's going to be Leona and Poppy usually, because Leona has the redeemed trait. So level 5 you can put in a redeemed unit, and there's actually a lot of redeemed units you can hit. You can hit Syndra, you can hit Lux, you can hit Varus. So that's why I prefer playing playing vanguards with AATROX and KALISTA. You know, you don't have to play vanguard. You could play brawlers as well if you hit like a 2-star GRAGAS and a 2-star WARWICK. You know, you can go with this, and then you know, you can just level 5 you can just pair this with like a Dawnbringer or something like KHAZIX, or, you know, Soraka, whatever is pretty strong. But usually a lot of my early game boards with KALISTA and AATROX is going to be Leona and Poppy, and then level 5 will be a, you know, like most of the time it's going to be like a Syndra. And then basically, whenever you hit better, if Leona and Poppy are not 2-starred, if you hit better knights like Nautilus, you can replace Poppy with Nautilus. You can replace Poppy with Nautilus. You can replace Nautilus with Thresh. You know, whatever you hit. Basically, you're just like continuing the synergies. You know, let's say you do you hit the, instead of Syndra, you hit the Varus. The next level you can play a Ranger like Ashe, like this. And then depending on how good your early game is, you either have to roll at 7 or you have to roll at 8. So this is a very common like early game board. A lot of the times you are stacking Kalista with like AD items, and then this is a clean transition into, you know, Aphelios. You just sell the Kalista and then you play the Aphelios, and then you know, sell the AATROX, and then you put whatever frontline you hit on your roll down. Next on, let's move to Gragas. So Gragas has Dawnbringer and Brawler trait. You're most likely going to be pairing Gragas with Warwick. So whenever you have Gragas, you want to look out for Warwick for the early 2 Brawler comp. And then with Gragas, you usually will be playing you know, KHAZIX for the Dawnbringer trait. And then you know, if you have KHAZIX, you can pair it with another assassin like LeBlanc, something like this. This is a very common opener, Brawler plus Assassins. But the thing to keep in mind is KHAZIX kind of falls off at stage 3. If people are full clumping, then KHAZIX won't get the isolated value, so KHAZIX isn't that good. So you do need to like you know, maybe sell KHAZIX for a better assassin like, you know, Katarina or, you know, Nocturne, something like that. And then you just you know, you complete this board. You can play 4 Sins. You know, if you hit 4 Sins at level 6, you know, if you hit the 4 Brawlers, you can play 4 Brawlers, which is also very strong set with Nunu, something like this. So besides assassins, you will also, another start for this is going to be renewers. So you also want to be looking out for the Lissandras, the Vladimirs, and the Soraka, because Soraka also gives Dawnbringer to Gragas, and she has a renewer attack. A very popular one is probably like you know, you item hold. Lissandra holds your AP items, so like Blue Buff, Jeweled Gauntlet, and then you transfer it to Karma or Vel'Koz. This is a very common board. If you happen to high roll an Ivern, you get 4 Renewer, and then this comp is like super busted. You know, sometimes you can hit you know, 4 Dawnbringer. If you hit like a Riven, Nidalee, and like a Riven, you could play 4 Dawnbringer, something like that. You know, you have 3 renewers, so usually you keep the Soraka, Lissandra, you can take out the Vladimir for an extra slot. There's a lot of possibilities. You know, sometimes you will high roll a Morgana, you can play Coven, so it's going to be LeBlanc and Morgana. And usually you'll just Coven leader the Lissandra, because if she has all your items, or if you have like a GA Morello, you'll Coven the Morgana. Next we have Kalista. It's going to be the same thing I talked about with AATROX, so it's going to be Kalista, AATROX, Frontliners, Vanguard, or Brawlers. And then, you know, maybe if you can get 4 Legionnaires in, you can get 4 Legionnaires with Riven and Yasuo. So if you get Riven, Yasuo, you do have the 4 Legionnaire. When you have, if you happen to play an early mid game Legionnaire, like 4 Legionnaire, you can pivot into the Mordekaiser Legionnaire comp, which is like 6 Legionnaire Mordekaiser carry. Besides that, you can also play, if you hit an early Nunu, you can also look to play an early Abomination, something like this. And then 3 Abomination early game is also extremely strong. But this, you know, this comp lacks frontline, so you do want the frontline, you know, Vanguards. 2-star Vanguards will be really good just to block a lot of damage. And then, you know, if you're high rolling level 7, you can just play a Spellweaver like Zyra to round out the Spellweaver trait. You can play a Brawler with Nunu. You know, you can drop the Vanguards. You can play a Brawler with Nunu, you know, Gragas, and then Warwick, and then let's get the set in for 4 Brawlers, something like that. But I would say the core of you want to build around Kalista, AATROX basically. KHAZIX, very similar to what I was saying. If you're carrying a KHAZIX early game, you really want the Gragas and Warwick, because you get the Dawnbringer trait. But it isn't needed. Like, you know, if you hit like a Poppy 2, Leona 2, you're going to play it. So, you know, KHAZIX is a backliner, so you want to have whatever frontline you can get. You know, Poppy, Leona, and then you want to pair this with assassins. Most likely you'll get LeBlanc, and then, you know, with LeBlanc you can pair Coven. You can play 4 assassins, you can play more frontline, stuff like that. With KHAZIX, if you have Gragas and Warwick, and you hit a Soraka, you can play, you know, another Dawnbringer, 4 Dawnbringer. So whether that be Riven or Nidalee. But basically with KHAZIX, you do want to play around KHAZIX and Brawlers usually. KLED. So KLED is a Helion. Whenever you have Helions, you do want to play the Helion early game. Helion is super busted early game right now, especially because ZIGGS with Static Shiv is broken. So basically, KLED, you want to pair it with Poppy and ZIGGS, something like this, right? And then you want to level 4 is going to be a Vanguard, is going to be a Knight. So common level 4 board is like 3 Helion, 2 Knights, and then level 5 you do most likely want to play the Spellweaver, so Brand to pair with ZIGGS, something like this. When you get a cannon though, KLED is probably the weakest one out of the Helions. So if you get a cannon, you do most of the time you're going to be replacing the KLED with cannon. But if you have a 2-star cannon and only a 1-star poppy, you know, you can take out the knights and play the KLED, and then you can play another Cavalier with KLED like that. So basically you're either playing Cavalier frontline or Knight frontline, whatever 2-star you have. Let's say you have a 2-star KLED here, it would be something like this. And then if you ever hit 5 Helion, like if you hit the Lulu, you do want to play it because 5 Helion's broken. So you play the Lulu and then you play the Poppy, and then you have 5 Helion. So this would be a level 5. And then level 6, you know, you add I like to add a Knight. You know, Thresh, Nautilus, Leona, whatever you hit or whatever is the strongest board. And then, or you can play Spellweaver, you know, Brand, Victor, or Zyra, something like this. Then like level 7 you can round it out, right? Like let's say if you played Spellweaver for level 6, level 7 you can play a Knight, something like that, right? Level 7 you can play a Cavalier, something like this. And then usually with Helion, your board is strong enough to last all of stage 4, level 7. So you can, most of the time you'll be transitioning out of this combat level 8 at least. So that's why this is one of my favorite openers right now. Next up, we have Leona. So Leona is a Knight. You're always going to be playing Leona with another Knight. Most of the time it's going to be Poppy. It can be Thresh. It can be Nautilus. These are the early game Knights. With Leona though, you want to be looking for Rangers. Rangers plus Knight early game is pretty strong. So the VAYNE and plus Varus, and then Varus gives redeemed. So then you can level 5. You can play a very strong any redeemed. So Syndra, Lux is probably the best, something like this. Also a very common board for this is level 6. If you have 4 Knights, you want to play 4 Knights. It's very strong. So you play the Thresh and you play the Poppy, and then now you have 4 Knights, 2 Rangers, which is a very strong level 6. You know, level 7 you play a redeemed. Very strong like this. And in this opener, you basically just put all the AD or AP items on Varus. He can also hold both, very similar to Kalista. And then with this comp, you can transition to whatever, you know, you can, if you have AP items, you transition to Vel'Koz or Karma. If you have AD items, you transition to Aphelios or Draven. And, you know, if you have like attack speed items and you're high rolling, you can transition to Kayle or something like that. Lissandra. So with Lissandra is a renewer in Coven. Lissandra, you do want to be looking out for the Vladimir. Most of the time, you're going to be pairing Vladimir with Lissandra. But the thing is, Vladimir isn't, it's a pretty good frontline, but not that good. So most of the time, I want to be pairing it with frontline. Like I talked about before, you want to be looking for, I prefer brawlers over knights because you can, if you hit a Soraka, that's another renewer, and it gives Dawnbringer for Gragas, like I mentioned before. Another opener with Lissandra is, like I mentioned before, is Coven. If you had a Morgana, you do want to play Coven. It's extremely strong. Morgana, LeBlanc, and then this, you usually don't have a frontline with this board unless you have GA on Morgana. So you want to pair it with, you know, brawlers or knights. Lissandra is an extremely good item holder for any AP comp you're going to go into, whether that be Vel'Koz, Heimerdinger, or Karma. Poppy, same as the Helion board and same as the Knight board. So if you have a Poppy, you know, you pair with Leona and you go from there. If you have the Poppy, you know, look for the ZIGGS, look for the KLED, look for the cannons, stuff like that. If you don't hit Helions, you could, this is a frontline, so you can play whatever. You can play, you know, ZIGGS is good. And if you don't have, if you don't hit a third Helion, you could easily just play Spellweaver, and you can just play a Spellweaver Knight frontline. And then so level 5, level 6, you could play 4 Knights at level 6, or you can play 4 Spellweaver at level 6. Like if you have the Leona and Poppy 2-starred and it's already a good enough frontline, you can play the Victor and you can play the Zyra. And this is also a very strong level 6. And then, you know, you can just, at level 7, you can play a Helion if you want to. UDYR. So personally, I rarely play UDYR early game unless I have the early Draconic. So let's say you get an Ashe or Zyra from orbs, you do want to be looking out for UDYR, because if you get a set, you will have 3 Draconic, and if you have 3 Draconic by like 2-1, it's like a free top 4. With this pairing though, like if you have set, you want to pair it with a brawler for more frontline. UDYR is pretty weird because skirmish is hard to tech in, and then you play a ranger with Ashe. Pretty simple. Once you get the Zyra, you probably just take out the UDYR and you play Zyra. and then you go from there. You know, sometimes you could get UDYR. If you get like one skirmisher from Orb, like let's say Lee Sin or Nidalee, something like that, or like Pantheon, you could look to play 3 skirmisher early game, which is very, very strong. You know, most likely you let's say you hit the Pantheon, and then so you want to be looking for UDYRs, and then you most likely will hit a cannon before all the other skirmishers, and then you play 3 skirmishers from here. You just stack. Usually when I have a skirmisher start, I probably want to play Jax. So then in that case, you just have UDYR hold all the Jax items, and you just transfer to Jax level 7 or level 8. Vayne. If you get like a lot of Vaynes early game, you have the option to play Vayne reroll. With Vayne reroll, basically you want to pair it with a Ranger, which is going to be Varus. And then your frontline is going to be, if you hit a lot of Warwicks, you want to play Warwick plus a Brawler, GRAGAS. And you want to be rolling for like Warwick 3 and Vayne 3. But sometimes you don't hit, you have like not that many Warwicks. Then instead of Brawlers, you can play Knights with Thresh, like this. Or if you have a lot of Hecarim's, you can play Cavaliers. Hecarim plus, you know, KLED or Sejuani. And then you just keep rounding out the board. Once you have your frontliner in, whether it be Hecarim, Warwick, or Thresh, you want to round out the 3 Forgotten, and it's going to be one of the other 3. So, you know, Warwick here. It could also be Victor. It could also be Victor, and you know, Thresh, something like that for Vayne reroll for Vayne. Yeah. So the early game opener with Vayne is very similar to it's the same thing if you're playing reroll or not reroll. You know, it's going to be 2 Rangers, frontline, and Forgotten. Vayne is a very, very good item holder for Aphelios. She's really good for items such as Quinsus, Runons is very, very good on Vayne. If you hit an early Varus 2, you can stack Varus instead and then play the redeemed route instead of Forgotten. Vladimir, same board as when I mentioned with Lissandra. It's going to be Renewer, Frontline, plus whatever. If you have a stacked Vladimir though, you do want to get the Nightbringer in. So, you know, early Sedge for Nightbringer. Most of the time you'll hit a Yasuo or Lee Sin. So you can play a Lee Sin for Nightbringer. You can play a Yasuo for Nightbringer. Something like that. If you hit you can play 4 Nightbringer. If you hit the Morgana here, something like this, and then you can probably just stack Morgana. If I have like early 4 Nightbringers or something like this, I'm most likely going to play Aphelios. It's an easier transition, so I'll have Yasuo hold like the Aphelios items, stuff like that. You know, if you don't have a lot of Lissandras, you could play Soraka for Renewer, something like that. Or you don't even have to play Renewer, and then you can just play off like Morgana carry or Yasuo carry. With Yasuo carry, you do want to have the Legionnaire. So, you know, KALISTA, AATROX, you know, whatever. For Warwick, same thing as I mentioned before. Most likely you're going to be playing with GRAGAS, and with GRAGAS, you're going to be playing with Dawnbringers, so KHAZIX, Riven, Nidalee, you know, Soraka, stuff like that. You could also play, if with Warwick, you could also play the Forgotten route with Vayne, plus 1 Forgotten, like Victor, something like this, and then a Ranger, something like this. And then, or you can play 4 Brawler with Nunu and Set. Last one is ZIGGS. ZIGGS is one of the strongest early game champions in the game, so if you see a ZIGGS in your shop, you should pick it up. And then, you know, it's the same thing. It's the same thing like I talked about before. You'll be playing the Helion board with Poppy, Knight, and one more Helion, preferably Cannon. If not Cannon, KLED. And then you just round it out with a Spellweaver. If you don't have Helion, you can just take out the Helion and play Spellweaver instead. Spellweaver frontline, or Spellweaver, or 4 Spellweaver, 2 Knights, or 4 Knights, 2 Spellweaver. If you don't hit the Knights, you know, you can totally play the Brawlers also. So you play a Spellweaver Brawlers, it isn't even that bad. And then ZIGGS is a very good item holder. ZIGGS is so good because ZIGGS can item hold for AD and AP items because he has such high attack speed. So he's also very good with AD items, but he's also very good with AP items as well. So that's most of the early you know, mid game boards I'm playing usually. And then I usually never roll at 6. I always like roll at 7 if I'm pretty low or if I need to stabilize. If I'm high rolling, I'll roll at 8. But then, you know, it's pretty simple. You know, Brawler frontline, and then if you're playing GRAGAS, you want to pair it with Dawnbringers, so Soraka, KHAZIX, or Riven or Nidalee, and then you go from there. Or you play the Knight frontline, and then if you have Helion, you play with Poppy, you play Helion. If you have Spellweavers, you play Spellweavers. You know, if you have Rangers, you play Rangers. If you hit a, you know, Legionnaire, you play Legionnaire with frontline. So that's it for my early mid-game guide. Those are the boards I showed you right here are usually the boards I'm playing until level 7 or level 8. And hopefully this video will help you out and, you know, give you an idea of what units to hold depending on what 2-star 1-cost unit you hit in the early game to build around.